Entrepreneurially Thinking is a presentation of BioSTL and CET, Center for Emerging Technologies, with RareGem Productions, changing the way you view new ventures, including you on the pathway to success with your business in the St. Louis marketplace and beyond. Here's your hosts, Cheryl and Christy. Now let's get thinking entrepreneurially.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurially Thinking podcast. Our goal is to energize your entrepreneurial mindset and create pathways to business success in the St. Louis marketplace and beyond. I'm Christy Maxfield. I am the Director of Entrepreneur Development Services at the Center for Emerging Technologies.
And I am Cheryl Watkins-Moore, Director of our BioSTL, Bioscience and Entrepreneurial Inclusion Initiative.
As you've heard us say before, with each new show, we step a little further outside of our comfort zone.
Always.
And we welcome you to come along with us to think about your business in new ways. We want to take the constraints off of how you view your current and future endeavors. Mm-hmm. So we also invite you to join us and stay in touch with the Entrepreneurially Thinking community on all of your favorite online streaming platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, or by visiting our website at entrepreneuriallythinking.com, following the hashtag ETHINKSTL. So today we're talking with Dr. Karl Kammerer, Director of the Duree Center for Entrepreneurship at the Plaster School of Business and Entrepreneurship at Lindenwood University.
That's a mouthful.
It is. It actually is longer than mine, and that's impressive.
Yes.
So for some of our listeners, you may know that the Duree Center for Entrepreneurship is focused on business creation and community outreach as well as student development. A lot of that work is being able to advance the entrepreneurial endeavors of our community through long-term mentorship, partnership, and innovation. So we're excited to have Dr. Kammerer with us to talk about his new role. He's actually new to both Lindenwood and to the Duree Center, and we're happy to have him back after a number of years away to the St. Louis area again. Mm-hmm. And we're here to learn more about the Ice House program based on the book, Who Owns the Ice House?
I think this is going to be so exciting. Christy and I, when we look at bringing speakers on, I think it was so interesting to read about your background, about the South. So I'm so excited and really interested to hear your perspective on the entrepreneurial mindset in our space here in the St. Louis
Absolutely.
market.
I'm excited to be here. It's a really cool course. I mean, that's a great component of what I do. So excited to be here talking about. Excited to be here outside of our comfort zone. Is that where?
Yes, we are.
That wasn't in the memo. No, just I love it outside my comfort zone. This is
it's a great way to start a Tuesday,
right?
Exactly,
or any day of the week. For
Entrepreneurs
that
exist outside the. I can't remember where I lost. Actually, I can't find my comfort zone. Has anybody seen my comfort zone?
No, I have not seen your comfort zone, but I'm glad you're here because that's also the kind of perspective, humor.
Mm-hmm. You have to have humor when you're an entrepreneur. Are you kidding me?
No doubt. Yeah. Which is why we laugh a lot. You'll hear that if you're tuning in regularly. That will be no surprise to you. The Ice House program has become one of the center's signature programs. We're going to take a quick break and continue that conversation when we come back.
Now here's Make It Happen with Keith Sales Pro.
Here are 8 lessons on how you can cash in like Kevin Hart. According to celebrity entrepreneur Farrah Gray, here are 8 keys to his incredible success. He's a social media monster. For real. Kevin Hart has more followers on Twitter than Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock combined. He has a shoe-in as an entrepreneur. At 18, Hart was already making it as a shoe salesman. He was determined. He had a dream, and that's what he followed. He's never been afraid to work hard. As a stand-up comic, he would sometimes do 7 shows on a weekend. He stays humble. The fame and fortune does not go to his head. He listens to those who have gone before him, such as Chris Rock, Jay-Z, and Arsenio Hall. He practices. Remember how Michael Jackson would still spend several hours each day working on dance moves and new material even after rehearsal was over? And finally, he turns life into fun. Understand that the road to success hasn't always been paved with gold for Hart. He's experienced the lean times and dealt with many of the same issues most of us have, such as divorce and family tragedy. Today, remember, it can happen. It will happen. And together, we will make it happen.
Follow Keith Sales Pro on Facebook or Twitter at Keith Sales Pro, or visit his website at keithsalespro.com.
It can happen. It will happen. And together, we will make it happen.
Hello, my name is Zim. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Cronus Sleep. Entrepreneurial thinking, to me, means taking the opportunity to reflect and grow.
So, as I said, you're new for all intents and purposes back to the St. Louis area, having grown up here until you were 15 or so, and then leaving, just getting your PhD, rock on,
Thank you.
And then coming back to assume this position at the Duree Center. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of your journey and how you got here and why we're lucky to have you back in the area?
Yes.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here, and it's so much different. This place has changed quite a bit, especially I was in sort of western St. Charles County when I was growing up here, and you don't even, Wentzville, you don't even recognize it coming in. We've had family here who've been coming to visit sort of, so every Christmas, Thanksgiving, sort of looking around like, wow, this place has changed. So I had not such a shock because I kind of watched some of it change, but so it's great to see all the good things that are happening here and be a part of, coming back and be a part of that for sure. So my background, essentially 2 paths into entrepreneurship, right? So I started, when I was in my undergraduate in business school, I started a small toxicology laboratory with my grandfather. Actually, we co-founded this place. And how I explained to everybody, he came to me and said, he's a clinical toxicologist by trade. So, and he said, I'm sick of working for the man, and you're in business school, and I'm sick of working for the man. And that's actually like the number one reason to start. I'm just sick of working for the man. They say be your own boss. I say sick of working for the man. That's a better way to say it. He said, I'm sick of working for the man, and you're in business school, right? So what do we do? What do we got to, let's get out there and do something. I want my own thing. And I said, Pops, I have taken all of the introductory classes.
I know everything.
We've got this. Intro marketing, intro finance, a little bit of accounting.
So you could take him to the towers.
So
to the height of the towers.
Yes. I say, we've got this. We've got this. But then phase 2 of that is all most entrepreneurs know is the excitement of the launch. Like usually the sinking feeling comes later. And for me, that came when we got started. We acquired another small business through debt financing. We're middle class folks, so it's not like we just bankrolled this thing. There was an assumption of some risk, a note. When you're a small business owner, or when you're starting a small business, anything startup, the bank wants a lot of skin in the game. So we're about 6 months in, and I was 20 years old, so I just ran headlong into it, and I was like, well, let's see. My grandfather's put his 401k down as seed money. We rolled it into the company, which you can do. You just set up the C Corp and roll in the financing. It's actually, as a side note, it's kind of a neat way that you see a lot of baby boomers becoming entrepreneurs is they take that 401k money, form a company. The C Corp adopts a 401k plan.
Excellent.
Then you roll your 401k from the employer that you're leaving to start your own thing. And then the company, the 401k plan purchases company stock. Your 401k just became seed money without taking taxes. So, and then you have to pay back your 401k eventually to be in right standing sort of as far as 401ks go. But so a neat way to get started. So that's how we did it.
Absolutely.
Then I'm adding it up here. And I'm like, okay, so his whole 401k sunk into the seed money. We've got a bank note that they asked for his house as collateral against the note, his personal property, because it's a small business.
Absolutely.
So if we don't succeed, I will have started my career by ruining my grandfather.
He'll be moving in with you, not the other way around.
Well, that was the joke actually around the shop was, we'll all downsize into something together. It's like,
well, that's what I was going to make a comment about is that here you have your grandfather, a seasoned person out there, and you just got out of business school.
Still in. You'd only done the intro courses.
Still in business school and came up with this idea and how to move forward. It's really interesting that he took the risk with you to do this.
Yeah, and it's a tremendous, it was huge that he did. It's one of those things that you couldn't have planned. It kind of just came together, right place, right time, right everything. But he believed in me, and that was a huge, and that's what, as we start to talk about the entrepreneurial mindset, surrounding yourself with a community of network of people who are supporters. And luckily I had that in my grandfather and in my family. Because it was do or die. The punchline of that was, if I don't do this, we're done. It was in the ocean with no life jacket on.
So did it separate your family into some who were the naysayers going, what in the world are you doing with Grandpa's money?
Well, maybe.
You don't get anything in the will because you've just spent yours now.
Oh, man. Well, it does family business. We could go on a long tangent here, but
we'll have you back for that and
we'll
financing.
come back on another one. Yeah, we'll come back on that on another one. But no, it's a good, the company's still running today. So where I went from there, I finished the undergraduate, did an MBA in an evening program, kind of still had that hunger for being in the sort of learning, knowledge generating environment.
So were you running the business, or was it?
Yes. I was day to day. I was day to day in the business. Okay. Yeah. For 5 years. So from launch through the acquisition, and then a couple years into my PhD program, PhD program's a full-time, more than a full-time. It's 2 full-time jobs at once, actually. So I was sort of still consulting with the company at that point, and still am. They're still running today.
Oh, great.
But I got to see that note I was talking about paid off. The company's debt-free.
That's wonderful.
Rolling right along. We have 7 employees, most of them family. And so it's sort of become just sort of a great source of economic prosperity for my family. And it helped me to get through graduate school. And I think so it was a wonderful experience, being an entrepreneur and then going in and looking at things from the academic side. And then now finished the PhD last year, and here teaching undergraduates, working with young aspiring entrepreneurs through the university, working with,
So you're walking the walk. You have started that company. You have, grown the company, and now you're giving back with a paycheck.
Well, that's the best. That's the way to do it.
But by teaching these principles to students that you have right now.
Yeah, I'm passionate about it. I've been around the mountain. That's what I tell them is I've been around that mountain. And there's some folks I understand from more of an academic perspective. The minority of startups, maybe 2% of them are these sort of high growth, VC seeking, just the unicorns, as they call it. I love, and I could go on with the unicorn analogy, but so I'm not that guy. Right. And I'm happy to say so, because I once had somebody confrontation, you're not an entrepreneur. And I'm like, really?
Really? Right.
Okay. Well, what am I? You're a small business guy. And I'm like, well, okay.
Well, that's interesting that you brought that up, because we have that debate a lot, and a conversation, I should say, because we've talked with a lot of different entrepreneurs who don't like the E word. They don't see themselves as an entrepreneur. And so they see themselves as a small business owner, or having a side hustle, or doing a side gig, whatever that may be. So I find it interesting, just as somebody wanted to make sure you didn't improperly claim the title. There are other people who very purposefully don't want to claim that because it doesn't fit their ethos of who they are. And so can you talk a little bit more about maybe even the entrepreneurs you're meeting now and how they self-identify?
Absolutely. Yeah, the label entrepreneur is a little onerous for folks. I can definitely see that, especially, you talk about the side hustler. That's how most of these things start, really. I mean, and that's the practicality. Shows that's
actually the best way to do it.
Right. And that's really, to start tying in, talking about the Ice House Entrepreneurship Program. I mean, that's the approach, is that, a lot of times, the data out there, less than $10,000 in startup money. Your most startups, less than 10 grand, bootstrap it. And no grandiose master plan. It's sort of, you discovered a problem, and you kind of fell in love with the problem and started working at ways to fix it for yourself, or maybe, for others. And you kind of tinker, and then you kind of hit the jump off point where you're like, okay, now's the time. I've kind of built the mass to put an organization around this. Not the sort of other model we see where it's this plan and pitch,
Go and pitch to 100 VCs, and then you're going to raise all this money. Right. And then you'll be able to exit and living in, $1 billion, what is it?
Chateau.
Yes. Thank you.
And that's the exception and not the rule. And we're all guilty of this in business education. I mean, honestly, I love being in the small business and entrepreneurship space because it's the biggest chunk of the economy, but it's the most overlooked, because where do we get data from, right? Big publicly traded companies. They file 10Ks. There's a lot of easy, low-hanging, easily accessible archival data. So everybody runs their research on these big companies that they really only employ less than half of the working population.
And when you said even $10,000, here are folks who don't even have that amount of money to start companies. They're starting it, either through blood, sweat, tears, through, maybe
or it
working
takes them
on the
years
side.
to put that together. Yeah. That's $10,000 over a number of years.
Absolutely.
Of, scraping together, and maybe there are a few friends and family, but it's not like that money's sitting in a bank account burning a hole in somebody's pocket either.
And what we've always said is you might be starting your business while you're working for someone else.
Absolutely.
So that's also another alternative for folks.
So we just finished finished up the Ice House course that we do at Lindenwood's North County campus last night.
Let's start with there. Tell us
great
about
group of
Ice
folks.
House.
Great group of folks. Actually,
Yes.
I'm fresh off the buzz of having great class. Yeah, no,
Working
it really
with
is.
entrepreneurs is an energy you just can't match.
Absolutely. And that's another thing is there's so much energy around the search, the start of something brand new for folks. So when you interact with them, it's tough to match that energy. They kind of almost wear you out. As I was coming in today, I'm like, man, I was trying to match the energy. I'm coming down. Yeah, I'm coming down. Trying to keep the buzz going. But anyway,
we got him coffee.
Maybe I got a problem. Yeah, they've got my coffee, so we'll keep that going. But great group of folks, and they're all working. And for most of them, this is a side thing that they're really plugging away at. But that's why it takes so much discipline, so much hard work and effort, because it's in addition to.
Oh yeah, that's what we see in our Square One program too. Nobody has really quit their job and made this their full-time activity. And they're doing both. And
I encourage them really not to until they're at that point.
Exactly.
My advice is always, your business will tell you when it's time to quit your job. All of a sudden you'll have a contract in your lap with a customer and you go, I'm going to have to quit my job to fulfill this contract. I guess it's time to quit my job. Right. So the big mistake I see, and this is what we talk about, small experiments, right? This is a sort of another element of the Ice House program that I really buy into is, every step you take forward as an entrepreneur is a little mini experiment. You're taking a step. You're going to get feedback from a customer. Maybe you're getting your product out there, and you're going to adjust and sort of make little moves as you go.
Yeah, you're testing and you're learning and you're testing.
Right.
And if you're not learning and testing, you're probably not actually delivering something somebody wants.
Right.
Right. And it's fundamentally different than the way it's done in a larger established business too. The way market research is done. If we could talk about the research aspect, because I am an academic, and I appreciate this actually as a social scientist and academic, I appreciate the Ice House program. It's incredibly practical. So,
tell us about it. We've been talking all around it.
So talking all around it. Here we go.
And then we'll come back to the research side.
Here you go. Sorry.
This is a way to have a conversation.
This is, if you ask any of my undergraduate students over the years, they're like, yeah, Carl's great, but sometimes he's over there. That's all right. We get there. We're getting there. So, so the Ice House program, I'm lost. Where do we go? We're there.
So the Ice House program is based on a book called Who Owns the Ice House? And it's, 8 lessons from an unlikely entrepreneur. So maybe we could use the book to set the stage, because I think that really sets the tone and tenor for the work you're doing. And then we can kind of take it from there.
Sounds good. Yeah. So the book, Who Owns the Ice House? 8 life lessons from an unlikely entrepreneur. Gary Schoeninger, who's the founder and CEO of the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative, he's essentially the person behind developing the book into a course, a program, really. And then Clifton Taulbert, who's his co-author on that. The book's essentially about his Uncle Cleve,
who's an African American. I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, so he's incredible, and in the height of segregation, also in the Mississippi Delta, in the height of segregation. So, an entrepreneur against all odds is essentially one of the themes of the book. And it's a message that we're giving to folks that it can be done. It can be done.
Right. Any obstacle you think you have, talk to Uncle Cleve about what he faced.
Right. Exactly. He wasn't allowed in the front door of the bank. I mean, come on. I mean, if that wouldn't discourage an entrepreneur.
And he is one of many examples in the South, just to say that, of families that were African-American focused families that had businesses, that started businesses with nothing. Like I think I'm so interested in hearing about the book, because this is so real for many communities, not just African-American communities, but a lot of minority focused communities, similar type of startup type of focus.
Yeah. I see entrepreneurship as a fantastic vehicle to the self-directed life and to building the economic wealth that you want, where it seems like opportunities are being closed off to you. As an entrepreneur, you sort of seize the opportunity. You create the opportunity a little bit,
Absolutely. And so Clifton told the story of his Uncle Cleve, and Gary massaged that into a way that we could actually apply those principles in everyday life.
Right. So the great thing about Gary and where the rest of the course, what he wraps around the rest of the course around the book is these interviews he has with dozens of entrepreneurs. So he's essentially, gone on this great qualitative research campaign, as I would put it, really just hearing the stories of so many entrepreneurs. So what he does a great job of sort of extracting these life lessons, these principles out of the stories that Clifton's telling about his Uncle Cleve. And so there's 8 chapters in the book, 8 principles. It's pretty straightforward. It's a great read. I won't dig into all the principles, but essentially it's really, It's a great course overall because it ties into some of what I see as the best thinking around positive psychology, entrepreneurship, business. So this has roots in, you may be familiar with Duckworth's concept of grit, the construct. Have you seen some of this? So I don't think they cite her directly, but it ties well into that concept, which has a broader application. Locus of control, just kind of capturing that internal locus of control, realizing you do have influence over more than you may believe, and sort of kind of coming awake to that a little bit sometimes and going, I do have a bigger choice set than I originally thought, because there is more I could be. There are these things I could be doing. They don't cost me anything but time. So there's a realization to that piece, and it pulls all this together, this concept of grit, just perseverance in the face of a challenge, the growth mindset where, realizing that at the day you start your company, you don't know everything that you're going to need to know to be successful, and that's okay. And
you're continually learning.
Right. And so there's a learning process. There's a choice, and then you take action. You learn something from that action. It informs the next action you make, and you keep pushing down that road. I mean, it's easy to say. You can say in a couple sentences, relatively simple, but to get it, you got to get it ingrained.
And one of the things I was struck by when reading it was the underlying theme that Uncle Cleve believed his life mattered in a time where there was no evidence that to really support that. In the culture around him, in his community around him, his life was very expendable. And we're dealing with some of those same issues still today, where people still see, people of color still see their lives as expendable. So when we come back, I would love to talk more about the class you've just conducted and the people you've met through that experience. And if you have seen that mattering, that my life matters. And I have not, as you mentioned before, the locus of control, the growth mindset, the feeling like you have control over your own destiny, but also feeling as though the life you're living matters. That's what I'd like to pick up when we come back.
Sometimes you got to dig in to be alive and well. Sometimes you got to carve it out.
So I've learned that there really is no such thing as control. And the sooner you realize that, the easier life gets. You can have a plan, which I recommend for everybody to have a plan. Your main plan, a plan B, a plan C. But at the same time, when stuff goes wrong, I just don't sweat it anymore.
Montrese Williams, mother, author, triumphant victor. We all should be alive and well. Learn more at aliveandwellstl.com.
Hi, I'm Sequana Pryor of Tricore Technologies, and thinking entrepreneurially means focus, passion, drive.
So what we've been talking about is the broad framework of the book, which is based on 8 life lessons. But we've also seen that there's a theme of understanding that your life matters and that you have control over your life in ways that you may not readily recognize. Uncle Cleve shows us that in some really stark reality in 1958 Mississippi. But I would imagine that that's a theme that we're also seeing played out in our communities today. And you've just come off your first 5 weeks of actually implementing the course in North County. I was wondering if you could tell us sort of what those 5 weeks looked like and maybe how the theme of having control over and recognizing that your life matters, how that may or may not have played into the folks who decided to participate.
Well, it definitely does. But I sense a tremendous motivation among some of the folks they want to be entrepreneurs. It's really not about wealth for a lot of these folks. Actually, primarily not about
That's
money.
Been my experience as well.
And that is a lot of folks. And what you do see, though, in several folks, I'm thinking of one gentleman in particular, but he wants to be a pillar in his community. So he sees even the business as, there's some prosperity here better than working for an hourly wage. There's something there for me. But also that I could be, a respected business owner within my community, that matters. That would matter for people who are seeing what I'm doing, that I would be an inspiration to other folks. So there's a tremendous motivation. There's a tremendous pro-social motivation is the term you'd use if you were in a dusty academic journal, I guess. But
they want to give back. It's not just about creating for themselves.
And that's an amazing thing to see in the entrepreneurial community in general that I'm sure you've seen. And it starts from the beginning. That entrepreneurs tend to be people who want to create value for others. Exactly. And that's why they come up with these startup ideas. Usually is that they see others with a problem or themselves having a problem. They figure out how to solve it. They want to do it for other people too.
Well, I think it's interesting too, especially in the minority community, because a lot of times, I think sitting around this table, we have been blessed with the opportunity to go to school and get, 5,000 degrees and everything else, right? Whereas in some of these communities, they have not had that opportunity. So being able to go out and get a corporate job or to be able to get something that's going to pay very, very well, it might not be that opportunity. So for them, it's like, I'm going to create my own destiny. I think I can take the skills that I have, the knowledge that I have, and be able to start a business, grow a business, and be, like you say, a pillar in my community. I mean, I think when you look at in the 50s and the 60s and probably before that, that's how a lot of minorities started businesses, because they didn't have the opportunity to go mainstream to do that. So it's really interesting that you say that even that existed. I guess I'm asking the question, does that exist today?
Absolutely. I can hear the Star Spangled Banner starting to play in my head, but not to go all, get a fiddle out and go all patriotic on you. But this is a little bit of the American spirit. I mean, the self-directed life, and it doesn't have to be wealth creation. The freedom to choose where you want to head in life and building a life of meaning. I mean, entrepreneurship, to me, that's why people get so excited. That's why there is so much energy, because when you strike out as an entrepreneur, you're building an organization that's going to be a part of the society, the culture that you live in. And that's meaningful to you, which is meaningful. That creates meaning for a lot of folks, the connection between people. And so, yeah, entrepreneurship as a mode of, realizing meaning for your life and your energy, what you invested yourself into.
And being fabric of the community, too, right. I think is really, really big, too.
Yeah, and fabric, and we use that. So I've actually been thinking a lot about that lately. The fabric analogy, we say it all the time, well, it's woven in the fabric, but really think of a thread, woven in. This is a huge, we live in a broader world and a broader community. It's, you could always look kind of a ring bigger and see, the way we're connected. But, that thread in the sort of the fabric of our society is important. It connects to all the other threads. I really do, I went from sort of patriotism to sort of mysticism here. But I really that connection between people, that's what it boils down to for a lot of people.
Absolutely. So how many people participated in the 5-week program that you just concluded?
We had 11 folks, and we keep it small on purpose because that's essentially the idea. The course is, I'm not sort of laying down the law of entrepreneurship for folks. I'm facilitating a conversation about what are these ideas, how do these ideas hit you, and how could you use them to help with the problem.
Do they have to come in with a business idea?
Not necessarily. So the class is geared towards, the other thing I love about it is very accessible. I teach it. We do it at the Lindenwood North County campus. We'll do it over at the Lindenwood campus in St. Charles. And, the group of 11 I had for the last 5 weeks would probably demographically look a lot different than the group I'll have next week in terms of some of them will be students, like 20-somethings, whereas I had all probably, actually, to be honest, I may have been the youngest person in the room for the last 5 weeks.
That's our typical entrepreneurship pool.
So, the demographic is mid-career
to late-career professionals is what I'm seeing.
Well, yeah, and folks who are in those industries, also a lot of people with social entrepreneurship ideas. So
absolutely.
So I have to brag on her, and I might get a call from her if she ever hears this podcast. But
bragging's always good.
So Daphne Moore is the city administrator for Delwood. She joined the class she joined the class. We were just talking last night about how she ended up in the classes was because she was already sort of exemplifying one of the life lessons, one of the principles we teach about building a network, building a success network, building a community around you. She just reached out to the dean of the school business at Lindenwood because she needed interns. She needed something. She's got some entrepreneurial type of challenges that she's working with as the city administrator for the city of Delwood. Why did I start talking about her? Because she's a phenomenal person, but she's an example of the type of person who could come like you think, well, she's not necessarily starting a business, but she's facing entrepreneurial type of challenges.
And was able to see that within, she was able to see that within her own organization and then seek out a broader community, even bigger than the network she had already created, to help her pursue that. And she's not leaving anything. She may or may not be creating something, but she certainly has challenges that she's going to have to bring a new type of thinking to. So I think that's a wonderful example of the thing we're always talking about, too, is entrepreneurship doesn't always happen in a startup. Right.
I mean, in many of the challenges, so it's a phase of, our conversation kind of comes full circle. And there are a number of other folks too, before I leave it, that David kid is looking to start a barbecue restaurant, and he did some great experimental first steps too during the class. So
he brought in some barbecue.
Well, he didn't. We kept pushing him to bring in the barbecue for us, but no, he essentially ran what I would call his first experiment with his product. So he knew he's been wanting to do this. He's heard from a number of folks. You've got a fantastic recipe. He's he's a chef, cook. So he works in this industry. He knows it. And people have been telling him for a long time, strike out. And he joined the class. And then during the class, we talk about taking action, talk about building community. So his barber was encouraging him. And so we got to talking about how his barber thought they should do it and said, bring some in. And I said, so we're all kind of just talking about ideas about taking action. What's the next step?
What does that look like?
So he went out last weekend and, sort of just street vendor style, sold some barbecue out. The barber said, just set up outside of my shop, So he went out, great information. It's a small experiment, right? And this is why I encourage you. This is a low risk experiment.
Absolutely.
So the mistake that people make when opening a barbecue joint is they quit their job to take a loan, lease a space they can't afford. They're still not a customer. There's no customers yet.
Right.
So he was able to take action. Kind of do this, set up this sort of an experiment, get some feedback from customers, and it's great.
And nothing speaks louder than cash on the barrelhead.
Absolutely.
I mean, to validate your idea and give you the impetus you need to move forward.
And also leveraging your network, just like he's leveraging his network with his barber.
Absolutely. And we talked about that specifically. Is these people in this community you have around you, there's already sort of people there who want to help. You know them, they're connected, they want to see you succeed, they want to help you. So just figuring out who those people are.
And I think that's very interesting because I think Chrissy and I have talked to entrepreneurs throughout our time here in the ecosystem. Is always interesting when you have some entrepreneurs and they don't want to talk about their product. They're like, I don't want to talk to you about it because it's not, protected or this or that. And it's like, you know what? You got to get outside of that. But for people to know what you're doing and for people to be able to help you and maybe collaborate with you, you have to understand how to connect with people.
Absolutely. So if you can sense someone's very untrustworthy, then of course you're not going to share with them. But for the most part, the entrepreneurial community is a giving back. There is a culture of giving back in the entrepreneurial community. I mean, the example I always use to sort of illustrate this point to people is Shark Tank. I say, if you ever walk into a meeting with folks who might finance your business and they treat you like the people on Shark Tank, to turn around and walk out.
Absolutely.
I said, that's not the way entrepreneurship is done. That is not the community. That's not the cultural norm.
I agree.
So if you're working with folks like that, get out of there. Exactly. You don't want to be on a team with them. They're not going to help you get to where you need to go. They're going to cut you down. Yeah. So that's not this. So I tell them it's like all reality TV. It's totally fake. Like, that's not the way entrepreneurs act. That's not the way people treat each other in the entrepreneurial community.
And we've always said in this region, I mean, when you look at St. Louis, I think typifies truly the entrepreneurial spirit. People are here to help. They're here to collaborate with you. They're here to work with you. So it's all about you and getting out of your comfort zone and having that conversation with them.
Yeah. And that's, for a lot of people, that's the tough part. We talk about building community, asking for help, reaching out to folks. And a lot of times the hardest thing is just the ask.
Yes.
And it's not.
And the ask is necessary. People are more than willing to help, but they do need to be asked.
Right. And that's the question, is what is the worst thing that could possibly happen? You reach out ask for help, and somebody says no, and your feelers are hurt for 5 minutes, and then you move on with your life.
I tell my kid that if somebody tells you no, what's the worst thing that can happen? They can't kill you.
But it also isn't a no on everything and for everyone and for every instance. It's a no in that moment from that person.
Absolutely. And the biggest trick to that, and learning from failure, so that all this sort of spirals and other things, is you don't have to internalize it.
Right.
That's what I tell folks is, your solution to the problem may fail miserably. And I borrowed this from somebody, and I can't remember who to give credit to, but fall in love with the problem. Don't fall in love with your solution.
I say that very often. I don't know who I stole it from either, but I was encouraged to hear you when you started off talking. It was about finding the problem, being wedded to the problem, and then figuring out the best solution.
And the helpful thing with that is, if you fall in love with the problem and not the solution, if somebody rejects your solution, they're not rejecting you. You haven't you haven't come to identify and personalize your solution to where if somebody gives you negative feedback, you're devastated. You gotta be separated from it a little bit.
That's an N of one too. You're talking to one person.
Right.
So a lot of people get shut down because they went to you and you said, oh, I hate this idea. It's the worst thing. And then they'd say, okay, I'm not going to do it anymore. Well, that's the wrong way to look at something.
And that can come also, if your peer network, you got to look at who you're sharing your ideas with and what kind of feedback are they going to maybe give you. Because there's some things where peers of yours who aren't entrepreneur. I mean, that's not where they are, and it makes them a little uneasy. It really does. I mean, you striking out and doing something radically different, it's just a human phenomenon. Right. That's going to make your peer group who's not doing anything different go, why are you doing that? Right. Like, what are you doing?
It makes them uncomfortable.
You're upsetting me. You're rocking the boat.
And the odds of them stealing your idea are slim to none. Because even if I have that guy's barbecue recipe, chances of me executing on it the way he does, having the kind of draw he has, being able to do it. You know, we've talked and we will continue to talk about, as you said, balancing who you share with, what you share, when you share it, but also knowing that when your network is there, robust and in place, and when you seek new things out, like the Ice House program, where you can start to build a relationship with like-minded folks.
Absolutely.
That's where I think we do a lot of that. I think you leave the Square One program at CET with a huge network that you didn't have when you walked in the door. And that to me is really valuable. Yeah. But we're also focused more on the business model validation and the business competencies piece. What I see as a little bit different, and I'd love to get your take on this, is you're really doing exactly what we're hoping this podcast will do. And you're talking about mindset, which is even before I necessarily know whether or not barbecue is my thing.
Right.
I'm just curious about when folks take a class, they're looking for deliverables, right? There's something, though, what's in it for me? I'm giving up X amount of time to come and be with you. In the case of individuals who come through some of our programming, they're hoping to have a tangible product. I was able to validate or invalidate my business idea. I was able to meet new people. I was able to. What are some of the things that you're finding that the Ice House brings to the table? And
so if I can kind of play off what you just said. So what do you do when you invalidate the business model?
You're still an entrepreneur in my eyes.
Right.
You now have a framework to evaluate other ideas.
Right. And the buzzword is pivot, but I mean, you keep moving forward. So what's going to keep you moving forward when you come to square one, right? When you come to square one and you invalidate your business model, what you do next will be determined by your attitude. And if you've adopted the entrepreneurial mindset of these are small, you know, I'm experimenting forward, you know, and I invalidated a business model. Thank goodness I did, because I would have lost money had I, you know, actually gone out and done too much of this. I'm glad I figured it out when I did. What do I need to change? How do I move forward? That piece, I think, needs to be there first. Because if you come up with a business, if you start with the business plan and the solution you love and invalidate it, you may go, oh, well, I gave it a shot.
Right.
And it's over and you'll never get there. I mean, and if you interview most successful entrepreneurs, there were brutal times where quitting would have made sense. Quitting would make sense. Right. The only way that quitting is not rational is because you're passionate and your mind is set. Right? You're going to see it through.
There were days I woke up and said, am I stupid for staying or would I be stupid for leaving?
Right.
And because that's how hard it is. You're not sure what the right path forward is, to call it a day or to just keep on moving forward. And only really time will tell. Only when I look back on that will I know, was that the right choice at the right time. But it's my perseverance, my ability to tap into that grit you talked about.
Yeah. But I think that's when we talk about, as we've talked about this before, failure is a good thing. You know, it provides you with the opportunity to at least look back and see, you know, what happened? How can I change things? If I need to pivot, how do I pivot? How do I make this better? Do I need to continue down this path? Or am I like Chrissy just said, am I crazy for continuing down this path? Right. So I don't see it. You know, I think a lot of people, and I'd like to get your feedback too, from your participants in your last 5 weeks. What were some of the challenges that they faced, and how did you help them, or how did the class help them?
And this is great. I mean, it seems like community is emerging as a theme of our talk, that's sort of organic. So I guess there might be something to it. But you know, the class itself became a small 5-week community of people to share ideas with. Yep. So for one thing, you've got a network of folks who are already, you know, they're on a similar path or aspiring towards something more like you are. So that in itself is encouraging, you know, and we've had such a great diversity of folks. One person, Stacy, in the class, she's a mother. She knows she's got something to give. She didn't have a business plan or idea. You know, she was, I'll use the word edified, you know, that she was edified by participating in the class, motivated. Her sons they started a lawn mowing thing. And so she's really focused on her sons right now. So she was able to, so she was taking these ideas home. She was thinking last night, she had me excited. I mean, they all had me excited last night, because at the end of 5 weeks, they were feeling empowered inspired and motivated to continue down. They took steps during the 5 weeks, saw results, and it's that spark. And then keeping that motivation and momentum going is another kind of question, but because sometimes you need a reinfusion. So this is this is sort of the full selling point on it to me is when I went to the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative put on an event to sort of share the information about folks who wanted to facilitate this Ice House course, what it was all about. And I was reminded of things that I knew. I mean, I've done that. I've been around that mountain. And I was even thinking like, yeah, there were some times actually where I wish this would have been a part of my training because I had all the technical stuff. But when it came to the perseverance and some of the other attitudes, it was just sort of happened, it just so happened to have sort of, maybe I developed some of that through athletics growing up or other things, but if you didn't get it, you still can, and you can be reminded of it. You sort of re-energized and encouraged to say, I really do need to be approaching this problem, this thing.
So how often do you offer this course? So if I'm out there and I'm feeling like I need to light that spark,
I'd love to have you. I'd love to have you come on out. So we are gearing up a class that's already ready to take flight. St. Charles one, we'll be down at OPO Startups actually for this session with a group in September. But then we go about once a quarter in St. Charles and in the North County campus, Lindenwood North County campus off Washington. So I'll be back out there in January and another session gearing up for in St. Charles, probably February, March.
Great. And as we end our time together, it always goes so quick.
Yes.
I've had a blast. Thank you, guys. Yeah,
Thank you. But we always like to leave our listeners not only with how they can find you and more information, but if they're trying to light that spark and are waiting for the September or the January opportunity to come, are there any things you would recommend to somebody who's just stepping off onto that path that they could start doing today?
Absolutely. Well, we'll keep with the theme of community because I think it is so important, and that's where we've landed today. But I tell all of my students that there's never been a better time to be trying to become an entrepreneur. There's community everywhere. You could go to 1 Million Cups. You could go to, activities you guys are putting on here, activities we have through the Duree. If you just Google search entrepreneurship activities, groups meeting about entrepreneurship in the St. Louis region, you could line out your schedule for the rest of the year.
Right.
And so if you just go to a few of these, you start to get a sense for the folks and for some of the ideas and what's going on. So I would really getting out of the house, getting out of the comfort zone, right? Leave the comfort zone. Just go. Join the entrepreneurship community, even though you don't have to have a startup to join the community.
Right.
Just go be a part of some of the events and catch the bug.
Have to opt in.
It's contagious. So just go find some other people who are sick with the entrepreneurship bug and get them to get you some of that.
Can we plug this book again? Because I think this is so, especially for a lot of our listeners, to read something that about, how an individual, I think going back to Christy, your comment of having control over your life and that your life matters. This book is, I think, really typifies how these lessons portray this individual. So
sure. So who owns the Ice House? Clifton Taulbert and Gary Schoninger. That, you can pick it up. I got mine at Left Bank Books. You can get yours at your favorite bookseller. I also want to tell people where they can find more about what's going on with you and Lindenwood and Duree. So is there a website, a phone number?
Absolutely. DureeCenter.org for now. We're as many.
DUREE.
Yeah,
center.org. So DURECenter.org.
And then Lindenwood University, find me through the website. Karl Kammerer, find me any way you want.
Wonderful.
Kammerer at lindenwood.edu, however you want. Track me down. We'll talk.
Well, fabulous. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Changing the way you view new ventures, igniting your thinking about entrepreneurship. It's Entrepreneurially Thinking. Get connected and discover more. Visit our website for show notes, resources, information about our guests, upcoming events, and of course, all your favorite episodes. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them for us in the comment sections, and be sure to leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes. The best way to show love is to share. Let everybody know that you're thinking entrepreneurially. So visit our website, entrepreneuriallythinking.com. #ETHINKSTL. Entrepreneurially Thinking is another positive production of RareGem Productions. Thanks for listening.